afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this panel, South-South Cooperation, Energy for Inclusive Growth. We have a very august panel of energy ministers and advisors who can talk to us about the renewable energy options for their respective countries and the challenges associated with the transition. So let me just introduce the panel first of all. To my left, Flavien P Joubert joins us, Minister of Agriculture, Climate Change and Environment for Seychelles. Arzybek Kozhoshev is with us, Minister of Energy and Infrastructure from the Eurasian Economic Commission. Judith S. Kapinga, Deputy Minister for Energy from Tanzania, and Dr. Tawfiq E-Elahi Chowdhury, Advisor to the PM for Power, Energy and Mineral Resources Affairs from Bangladesh. And finally, Amitabh Kant, India's G20 Sherpa and former CEO, NITI Aayog, which is the National Institution for Transforming India. Let me start with Minister Joubert, and let me start by asking you, Minister, is the Seychelles on track to hitting 2030 emissions targets, and what's the best renewable option for Seychelles?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good afternoon, everyone. Well, the Seychelles has already set a series of targets for emissions from various sources in the NDC, which we submitted at COP26 and COP26, yeah. And it is still in our plans to try and achieve those targets, but we know that we would face many challenges, in particular the amount of renewable that we install between now and 2030. It would be a big challenge for us to install that much in terms of renewable to bring down our emission levels. But we know that it's not just a question of installing renewable sources. It's also a question of managing what you have in terms of existing sources and indeed bringing about energy efficiency into the system, which can actually mitigate a lot of the emissions from the economy. So for us, there are various ways and means that we are using to bring down our emissions. We don't know yet if we will be able to meet our targets, but we are doing a review right now to update our NDC, and we hope that that will give us some answers on how things are going. But we have quite a few investments lined up that should help us bring down stepwise, in a stepwise manner, the emission levels in the country. So for us, the will is there, the plans are there. There are some impediments, for example, financing, but we hope that we will be able to work through those one by one over the years. The major challenge for us as a country, of course, it's the financing of those investments, and we know that private finance is one of the ways that we can deal with that, and we have been encouraging projects where we get private investors to come in and set up systems and sell to the grid. But also, one of the particularities of Seychelles is that we don't have space. We're just very small, and we cannot, unlike many large countries like India, like other countries, we cannot set up large solar farms, for example, or large wind farms, because firstly, the wind resource is not very reliable, and secondly, we don't have space for large solar installations. So for us, it's also a big handicap. And it's also one of the reasons why we cannot invite, for example, the big players to come and set up very large systems in one go to solve our energy issues, or else we would have done that. So we have those various handicaps, but we have the will, and we are willing to work through those items one after the other so that we're able to stay on track and actually deliver by 2030.
Thank you for that, Minister. Can I just ask you that solar power seems the most obvious solution, if I will, for Seychelles. Can you just tell us why you are exploring solar energy options, but the microgrid and a decentralized system works best for you?
Well, it comes back to the issue I mentioned, which is space. So for us, one of the most feasible options is to have distributed systems on rooftops or in limited space that we have that are interconnected with the existing grid, or systems that stand alone on small islands in isolated locations that can actually support small communities or small entities like hotels, etc. So for us, we don't have the possibility of having big centralized systems linked to a major grid. We should go for smaller distributed systems to make use of the space that we have and to make best use of the setup that we have in the country right now. We have to remember that many of our entities that require power, they are situated on small islands on their own, and it's very difficult to connect them to the main grid. So we have to have systems that are adapted to their needs and that actually help them bring down their emission, and in return help us to bring down the overall emission for the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for that. Minister Kozhoshev, if I can turn to you, please. And this panel is entitled South-South Cooperation. Can you share with us the cooperation and the ideas, the innovation that you have learned from the India Energy Week, and how you are deploying that in your country?
Thank you. On behalf of Eurasian Economic Commission, I welcome all participants of the forum and express my deep gratitude to His Excellency Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri for invitation. Sure, such events allow us to discuss the prospects for the development of the energy sector, taking into account rapidly changing modern trends. And now, if you don't mind, let me switch to Russian. Уважаемые дамы и господа, мы очень долго добирались, более 10 часов, и я хочу поблагодарить организаторов данного мероприятия за высокий уровень такой организации. Я бы хотел кратко остановиться на нашей организации, которая называется Евразийский экономический союз. Мой коллега, предыдущий оратор, сказал, что у них маленькое государство. Мы по своей территории являемся самым крупным в мире экономическим интеграционным объединением. Более 20 миллионов квадратных километров. Входят такие страны, как Республика Армения, Республика Беларусь, Российская Федерация, Республика Казахстан и Кыргызская Республика. Чем мы интересны, как энергоресурсная страна? Мы имеем один из самых больших объемов полезных ископаемых именно энергоресурсов. 20% газовых хранений находится на нашей территории, 25% экспорта в мире именно экспортируется нашим экономическим объединением, 7% залежи нефти находятся на нашей территории. И сегодня наше экономическое объединение является одним из лидеров по продаже нефти в мире. А мы знаем, что Индия является одним из самых больших потребителей в мире. Я вот посмотрел статистику, Индия занимает 3-е место по потреблению нефти, 3-е место по потреблению газа и 4-е место она занимает по переработке нефти. Сегодня один из самых главных партнеров нашего экономического интеграционного союза является именно Индия. Для нас очень интересно, и моя миссия состоит в том, чтобы наши отношения были еще глубже, товарооборот дальше углублялся. По статистике 2023 года объем товарооборота между нашими экономическими объединениями 5 стран и Индии составил $50 миллиардов. Это говорит о том, что у нас есть хороший потенциал, хорошее начало, и мы можем дальше двигаться по данному направлению. Хотелось бы сказать о тех работах, которые мы сегодня проводим по возобновляемым источникам энергии. Это один из таких приоритетных направлений работы. Все 5 стран Республика Беларусь, Российская Федерация, Республика Армения, Казахстан и Кыргызстан ратифицировали климатическую, значит, повестку, которая была утверждена в Париже в 2016 году. Мы их полностью ратифицировали. Сегодня мы тоже идем декарбонизации. Мы все наши работы, значит, проводим в плане по климатической повестке дня. И, соответственно, надо сказать, что сегодня во всех странах есть законодательно-нормативные акты, которые поддерживают данную инициативу. Хотелось бы сказать, что Индия для нас это большой рынок, к которому мы будем дальше наши отношения налаживать. И экономическое объединение, которое сегодня имеет большие просторы, мы в этом отношении будем двигаться, чтобы наш товарооборот в этом отношении продвигался.
Mr. Kozhoshev, thank you very much indeed for that, those illuminating comments. Minister Kapinga, if I can move over to you, just walk us through Tanzania's experience and the challenges associated with the transition, and importantly, bringing it back to the central topic, how do you make this transition inclusive? How do you make energy affordable and secure and predictable?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Like so many African countries, Tanzania has increased application of renewable energy technologies, especially natural gas, that has increased that we use significantly in electricity generation mix to 60% as of now. For our country, natural gas has been an important transition fuel, not only for power generation, but also in transforming cooking into clean cooking. Almost 85% of Tanzanians are using traditional biomass, and that is what has made His Excellency, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Honorable Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, initiate a clean cooking initiative, not only for women in Tanzania, but also for women in Africa, and it was launched last year during COP28. So we really take issues of clean cooking very intensively, and we expect by 2033, according to our President's plan, at least 80% of Tanzanians are going to use clean cooking for home use. And with regards to energy generation, as I've said, we as a country, for natural gas, as I said, is an important transition fuel for generation, but also for CNG that we use at home and for vehicles, and also for industrial applications. The current power system master plan project that we have, we expect to generate at least 33% of power from natural gas by 2044, and we expect to have cleaner natural reserves. In Tanzania, as of now, is venturing into LNG project, which will see several countries outside Africa benefiting from this cleaner natural gas. But also, we expect renewable energy to contribute to almost 40% in electricity generation coming 2044 by having 8,200 megawatts, and also contributes into energy mix. We expect hydro to contribute by 28.1%, wind by 3.96%, solar by 3.5%, but 4.54%, and geothermal by 4.93%. And currently, in order to implement all the projects that we have a 84 million euro grid modernization project that is going on. And once this project is completed, and with the development in storage technologies, we expect our grid will be able to absorb more intermittent renewable energy, and hence renew of power system master plan that is expected to increase more solar and wind-based generations. And to achieve all these targets, we do have a number of projects that are going on so as to ensure energy mix. Currently, we are implementing a flagship project by the name of Julius Nyerere Hydropower, and we expect it to contribute 2,115 megawatts of hydro by end of this year. And we also have more than 5 projects of hydro coming through. And some of these projects we are also sharing with our neighboring countries in East African communities, such as Burundi and Rwanda. We also have interconnecting projects with also our neighboring countries, such as Kenya, Ethiopia, and Zambia. All of this, we want to ensure security, not only in generation, but also sustainability by sharing between countries. As I've said, 85% of our population relies on traditional biomass. We are urging into shift towards cleaner alternatives by 2033. I've already mentioned that. But also, we really pledge our commitment to all the resolutions that we have taken as a country. And with the energy sector, we have the national determined contributions that we really uphold into ensuring that we take renewable energy issues very seriously as a country.
Minister Kapinga, thank you very much indeed for that, and especially thank you for highlighting the point about cross-border interconnectivity of the grids, which addresses the issue of deficits and surpluses and how countries can help out their neighbours. It's definitely a conversation where I'm from within Southeast Asia and the ASEAN power grid as well. Thank you for that. Let me turn to Dr. Chowdhury now. And Dr. Chowdhury, let's talk about the economics and let's talk about the cost and subsidies, fossil fuel subsidies at an all-time high of $1 trillion in 2022 that far surpasses the support for renewables. Allocating finance to renewables, that can be controversial. If it's not handled correctly, there can be a public backlash. How is Bangladesh approaching this challenge?
Thank you very much. Let me just to start with reformulate your question. We look at energy as a subset of our overall development goals. We need to grow, we need to reduce poverty, we need to reduce infant mortality, maternal mortality, give our mothers better lives, children better life, sanitation. All these are overall goals. Within that framework, we look at energy issues. So that's one thing. The other is we don't have any carbon footprint of any significance. So mitigation is not our responsibility. The West and our own objective is to go for adaptation. So in such South-South dialogue, there are countries who are rich enough. Otherwise, there's a lot of asymmetry and diversity of goals and how the pathways towards that goals. So for us, we focus on economic development and try to have an energy system which is least polluting, which is efficient, and we don't think clean energy is a binary choice. For renewables, you include nuclear energy, which we are doing. Our reactor will come into operation this year. And also energy efficiency, energy conservation. If you look at this as a binary choice, then we miss out many opportunities that we have. In renewables, we started very early on when electricity access was very limited. And we had about 5 to 6 million households which were being provided minimum energy service from what is called standalone solar home system. Now with the expansion of grid, we have to redo this solar home system. We are focusing on niche areas where we can achieve development and still develop some amount of resilience and self-reliance by promoting solar irrigation. We spend close to $1 billion increasing importing fuels, diesel. That could be saved if we do irrigation during the daytime. Solar farms, Bangladesh, 170 million people in a small land area of 150 square kilometers. Now we are trying to have utility scale solar farms by introducing agriculture with that. So that if you do it properly, spacing and all, then we can have the farming of selected produce along with solar farm. So, we are trying to innovate given our limitations. And each country, I guess, will have to innovate given their own limitations. But we can share our experiences, we can share our future goals and pathways by doing research. Research is very critical for future. The world would remain still uncertain, and God knows how long. So I would suggest setting up a South-South Energy Research Center, and Bangladesh will volunteer to host that, so that we do research depending on different goals of different nations in South, and we share best practices amongst ourselves and try to see that we carry on with our development goals with empathy for Mother Earth and with resilience against the volatility and uncertainty in the global market. Thank you.
Dr. Chowdhury, thank you very much indeed for that. And finally, Amitabh, if I can turn to you, inclusive and sustainable growth was a clear cornerstone in the interim budget that India Finance Minister presented recently. Just bring us up to speed with the transition and how India is managing that transition and the leadership that we are seeing in everything from biofuels, biogas, biomethane, and clean energy solutions.
So let me first say that India has achieved about 185 gigawatt of renewable energy. We are the only G20 country which achieved its NDC target 9 years ahead of schedule. And our belief is that by 2030, we will achieve the target which the Prime Minister has set of achieving 500 gigawatt of renewable energy and bring the cost down radically. But even if we were to do 100% renewable energy, all this electricity is converted into renewable. That's only 20% of the energy. You have hard to abate sectors like steel, cement, refinery, fertilizer. All that is 80% of the energy. So the important thing is that we should be able to convert 80% of the energy which is hard to abate into cleaner forms of energy. And India today imports about close to $200 billion worth of fossil fuel energy, which is gas, etc., and we LNG, and then we use our own coal. The Prime Minister has set the target that by 2047, by the time we become 100, we should actually be an exporter of clean energy. Not an importer of energy, but an exporter of energy. And that means that we should be able to use renewable energy to crack water, use the process of electrolyzer and produce green hydrogen. India is climatically blessed. No other country other than Saudi Arabia has the climatic condition to do this. And our challenge for us is to really produce green hydrogen at the cost. Today it is $4.5 per kilogram. And our challenge is to bring the cost down to $1 per kilogram so that we become the largest producer of green hydrogen and export hydrogen, green hydrogen from in its liquid form, ammonia, to the rest of the world. But India has done other things. India has provided about close to 105 million people of its population clean cooking gas. 105 million people means that the entire population of Germany has been provided clean cooking gas. We've provided a better livelihood to the women of India through that. We are now driving the biofuel movement and ensuring that we are able to blend ethanol with normal petrol up to 20%. In the last 3 years, we've taken it up from 1% to 10%, and our target is by 2025 to take it to 20%. And more than that, we provided close to almost 200 million households LED bulbs. We moved over from high-consuming bulbs to LED bulbs all over India and brought down their costs. So we aggregate and provide that. And now we are doing the same thing by providing a huge movement, fillip, to electric vehicle transportation. We've done 5,500 electric vehicles in one tender, and now we are doing another 10,000. Our objective is that in the next 2 to 3 years, we should provide India with about 55,000 electric buses and make India the center for manufacturing of electric buses. We've given a huge fillip to two-wheelers, electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Almost all our three-wheelers are now electric, and we aim that by 2030, almost 70% of our two-wheelers would be electric.
Those are very interesting, ambitious targets, Amitabh. Can I just ask you, how difficult is it to strike a balance in terms of the most appropriate policy framework that can help renewable energy solutions scale? Because scale is the critical factor here. How do we strike the balance, or how do policymakers strike the right balance between incentives and taxation and market mechanisms, a price for carbon? Is it carrot, is it stick, or is it somewhere in between? What's India's experience in this?
So our experience is that India is the only country which can provide the size and scale. And therefore, in the initial periods, you have to provide some incentives, allow the markets to then take over. Markets must take over because that's the best way to drive technological innovation. That's the best way to drive size and scale. And that's the best way to ensure that constant disruption in technology takes place. So the private sector has to play a very key role. And India's solar movement, EV movement, hydrogen movement, all this, the private sector has played a very key role. And my belief is that over a period of time, India will bring in, we need to bring in carbon taxation so that we are able to push the movement much more vigorously forward. Penalize those who are emitting and reward those who are moving to cleaner fuels.
Amitabh, thank you for that. Minister Joubert, if I can return to you, and you highlighted cost as being one of the impediments, one of the challenges in the renewable energy transition and the development. How problematic has the prevailing high interest rate regime been for what are quite intensive capital spending deployments for renewable energy, and what low-cost financing options for renewable energy are at your disposal?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I would say that financing is one of the key items that's on the agenda of our ministry and also of Ministry of Finance when it comes to renewable. And the discussions we've had around transitioning and achieving the goals of the NDC, all the time it revolves around where we're going to get the finance from. Seychelles, as a country, we are classified as high income now, which is a bit of a difficult situation to be in, because despite our size, despite our vulnerabilities, we are seen as a country that can afford high interest rates and that can afford to borrow at a certain level that we cannot, in fact, afford to pay back because of the risk that happens all the time with different issues on the economic side, on, for example, tourism arrivals and all that. So we are seen as a high-income country, and we do suffer from the cost of finance, and our officers, our ministries, government have to fight quite a lot to try and put together packages comprising grant finance, comprising low interest loans, comprising bilateral loans to try and achieve those targets that are related to global goals. And we've up till now been trying to call for attention to this issue, but it is still a significant challenge for us. And once again, in our discussions with various countries, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they are trying to put forward this point. And there is the SEEDS conference coming up. We've had Voice of the Global South, and the same point has been raised again and again. And it cost us quite a lot. On the side of investments on renewable, we have also been trying to attract private partners to come and invest in the country, to invest in systems and sell power to the grid. But of course, they also are subject to high interest rates. So we try and find the right package, we try and negotiate. It takes a very long time, and that slows down the process because we can just readily access low-cost financing. But one of the things that we've talked about when we've talked about cooperation with South-South cooperation is that we should find ways amongst the developing countries to actually mutually support each other and find those solutions that are much more amenable, especially to island states like ours. Because just relying on those big traditional players, I don't think we're going to make it in terms of transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for that. You and I were talking briefly before the panel about the goals that you have been achieving in terms of mitigating the adverse effects of climate change on the shoreline, on the marine environment, on the terrestrial environment as well in the Seychelles. And you've been making some progress. Seychelles is really on the front line in many ways. Climate change is an existential threat. Do you feel that you have made meaningful progress in terms of the issue of rising sea levels, or is the Seychelles still at threat, and do we need to see more commitment?
Well, I must say that the threat remains because we are seeing it every day. We are seeing coastal erosion, we are seeing increases in the level of the sea. And in Seychelles, the record shows a minimum of 3 millimeters per year, and it's been going on constantly over the years. We have made a lot of progress in terms of protection. We have achieved our NDC targets in terms of protection of our natural environment, terrestrial and marine. The 30% goal we've already achieved very early. We've already achieved the protection of mangroves and seagrasses very early. We've achieved protection of our terrestrial environment very early because these are within reach. And one of the things that saddens me, our leadership, is that we have made so much, we have committed so much, we have sacrificed so much, and yet we still continue to suffer in terms of access to resources to enable us to do that transition. So it is something that what we can do, we have done, and we have been able to achieve them very early, and we are setting the pace for other countries to follow. But we would like to be also supported in other areas where we need assistance. We need assistance not to the tune of billions like large countries like India is talking about, but we need assistance. We're talking a few $100 million, not even $400 million to do this transition. But we still can't find it because of the cost of financing and of the barriers that exist because of our development status. And in fact, in many ways, we feel as if we are being penalized for having paid attention to the development of our country.
It's a very interesting and noteworthy perspective, Minister. Thank you very much indeed for that. Dr. Chowdhury, did you want to comment on that?
Pardon, which one did you refer to? Pardon, which one? Did I comment? Wanted to comment? Yeah? Rising sea level. Is that the question?
Please.
Well, you know, Bangladesh is a very low-lying country. So under certain scenarios, a third of the country would go underwater if the sea level keeps rising. So while we look forward to other countries to come and help adapt to this existential threat, as you said, we ourselves have put up a fund from our own resources, Climate Mitigation and Adaptation Fund. And we are investing in small amount in research, like how to have a salt-resistant rice variety, how we can have salt-resistant vegetables, how we can have floodplain rice varieties. So these are in work in progress, and we are trying to see how life could be organized, even talking about homes that could move around, floating homes. Because some things we don't have our control, and they are going to come anyway. It's a big challenge, and we hope that the loss and damage fund that's been talked about would come about, and through research, innovation, we'll be able to adapt and adjust and mitigate those environments.
Thank you, Dr. Chowdhury. Minister Kapinga, if I could just turn to you, when we look back at COP28 last year in Dubai, did you feel that the South got a good deal? Did you feel that we got the commitments that we need to pay for this transition, or did you feel that this was a missed opportunity?
For me, it isn't really a missed opportunity, because I believe all initiatives that have been taken through different regional blocks are quite essential, regardless on how they are being taken, regardless of blocks that they're being taken off. Because across all the global South, most of the countries, irrespective that we have this issue of energy transition, we must recognize each country has unique issues that they have to address into choosing the best diversification of energy sources with regard to each country. Despite the fact that we must have general initiatives that we have to agree on, that it is energy transition, but there are specific issues that each country face, and the initiatives depends on each country. For example, I believe on part of financing, it depends on the natural resources that they are there in specific countries. Even if investing on infrastructure, on energy mix might be very expensive, but everyone would like to venture into resources that are available naturally into their specific countries. If it is natural gas, or if it is hydro, even if financial, it needs muscles, but everyone would really like to invest into issues that are first available into their respective countries. We have issues that we are sharing. When we talk about security of energy, we are talking about infrastructure. It goes across in most of the countries. You talk about infrastructure, you talk about financial and technical assistance. You talk about energy efficiency, you evolve issues with regards to affordability and access. It runs across into so many countries. And third, climate change consideration. Also, it cuts across so many countries as well, because with changing of climate in different countries, would like to invest into infrastructures that are energy friendly, and climate considerations also would give you a projection on future trajectories as well. So different blocks, but the same issues that are being shared, the same challenges, opportunities. All that we have to venture on is experience sharing, capacity building, technical assistance, but also technological advancement, sharing best practices, opportunities that are there, lessons learned, so as we move along together.
Judith, thank you very much indeed for that. And that really links into what Amitabh was talking about, India becoming an exporter of green energy, green expertise, and innovation. And Amitabh, let me just turn to you, if I may, to round things off. We talked about the challenges, we talked about land constraints, we talked about cost challenges as well in higher interest rate environments, and how funding perhaps needs to be more targeted. How concerned are you about the situation in the Middle East spiraling out of control as it did with the Russia-Ukraine war? And what are the lessons learned from that crisis and reducing reliance on fossil fuel and building renewable capacity? Are the supply side challenges and unrest in the Middle East, is that potentially going to disrupt the transition?
I think on energy transition, there are two key challenges. And the first challenge is the failure of the developed world to live up to their commitments of what they had committed to in COP21 in terms of financial support and technological assistance. They have miserably failed on both. And that, to my mind, is the key challenge, because the developed world has occupied all the carbon space in the world. Out of 2,800 gigatons available, close to about 82% of it has already been occupied by them. 2,400 gigatons has already been occupied. And therefore, it was incumbent, on account of climate justice, a principle which has been accepted, that they make available finance and technology available to the developing countries and the global south. They've miserably failed to do so, number one. Number two, global south is not responsible for either the Russia-Ukraine crisis or the Middle East crisis. Both of them have very serious consequences. But that should spur the global south to push for cleaner forms of fuel. That should push the global south to cooperate amongst themselves. That should really challenge us to cooperate in terms of technology. It should spur us to have greater cooperation in terms of biofuel, in terms of a range of technological disruptions which will take place. And the global south is climatically blessed, and therefore it can be the champion of the new technology for renewable and using renewable to drive green hydrogen. And therefore the opportunity lies with us to cooperate, work in partnership with each other, provide technology transfer to each other, and really challenge the developed world in moving forward towards a cleaner world of tomorrow. The developed world is going back to fossil fuel, from Germany to Poland to United States to UK. All of them, during this COVID crisis, during the Russia-Ukraine crisis, during the Middle East crisis, they are talking about cleaner forms of fuel, but they're going back to fossil fuel. Whereas we should challenge them and go to cleaner forms of fuel and become the champion of it.
Amitabh, thank you very much indeed for that. Minister Kozhoshev, you wanted to remark.
Thank you. Буквально реплика, коли прозвучала одна из стран, которая сейчас у нас в такой ситуации находится, я бы сказал, что вот этот конфликт, который сейчас происходит на Западе, она в целом переориентировала рынок. Если раньше энергоресурсы из нашей экономически интеграционной страны, Российской Федерации, шло в Европу, сейчас она полностью переориентирована именно на восток. И сегодня центр развития мира, экономического развития мира сместился на восток. Это в том числе и Индия. Индия сегодня является одним из самых динамично развивающих стран мира. Итоги 2023 года, итоги 2022 года показывают, что из всех стран мира самый динамично развивающий внутренний валовый продукт является именно в Индии. Поэтому то, что происходит в мире, это наоборот отражается положительно на развитие энергоресурсов и продажи наших энергоресурсов на восток для вашей страны. Поэтому я думаю, что только положительное здесь.
Minister, thank you very much indeed for that. I'm going to close out this panel. We have about 3 minutes left. And let me just wrap things up by perhaps quickly just asking the panelists what they hope to see in the next few years as we get closer to 2030 in terms of progress and in terms of what you want to achieve by 2030. And Minister Joubert, let me start with you, please.
Thank you. From our side, we would like to achieve a certain level of energy security, of course, by integrating a greater percentage of renewable into our country, into the energy mix in our country. But at the international level, what we would like to see would be a greater will and a greater level of cooperation so that we actually make progress instead of just trying to dominate or trying to undermine each other's efforts. Because climate is not for one country, it's for the whole world. So we have to have this willingness to work together and really make significant progress at the global level. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Joubert. And Minister Kozhoshev, for the Eurasian Economic Commission countries, what are the milestones, what are the targets by 2030 that you hope to achieve?
Я думаю, что возобновляемые источники энергии, они будут с каждым годом расти. И, соответственно, борьба за энергоресурсы, она будет все-таки между странами будет ужесточаться. И в этих условиях вопрос энергобезопасности стран, она очень важна. И я думаю, что постепенно возобновляемые источники энергии, они будут преобладать над традиционными источниками энергии. В частности, если говорить о нашем интеграционном экономическом объединении, сегодня составляет порядка 36% использования возобновляемых источников энергии, в том числе и гидроэнергия, и атомное использование атомной энергии. И она с каждым годом будет увеличиваться. Я думаю, к 50 году этот процесс он будет намного больше, чем сегодняшняя ситуация.
Thank you, Minister. And Minister Kapinga, what's in store for Tanzania in terms of the targets by 2030?
As for us, we are looking towards more diversification of energy sources. We are looking more into energy security, efficiency, but mostly we are looking into having 80% of population using clean energy for cooking.
Thank you, Minister. Dr. Chowdhury for Bangladesh.
Thank you. You said what are hopes for the future. You wanted to hear about our hopes for the future.
Your goals and your hopes and your aspirations for 2030.
Okay. Hope springs eternally, you know. But if you ask me, as I look forward to borrow from Mr. Amitabh some of the points raised, it's full of despair. The war is not over yet. The Ukraine war, Middle East and all, they are work in progress for the Western world. They will keep disrupting any plan that we do. In last 2 years, $10 billion, which is about quarter of our foreign exchange, was additionally lost because of the price hike in fossil fuel. How can you plan about country? So, but be it as it is, we have to find ways of going around. We have set our targets to become a developed country by 2041. We still hope we can still make it. But, you know, I think the cooperation that Amitabh was referring to, that will be our pathway to overcome this crisis that will keep popping up. Don't think it's the last of the war. And along with that, you know, clean energy, I think there are other choices also, like what about trying to find us fusion? Maybe fusion may become a source of energy. Maybe we are trying to find out standalone, smaller modular reactor. Maybe they would be the answer for the future. Maybe we will have blue hydrogen, not only green, but blue hydrogen. Maybe we'll have to find ways of reducing use of fossil fuel in industries. So the whole sort of menu is out there. But I've become an agnostic, to be very frank, you know. But then, you know, as we have to live, we'll try to find ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chowdhury. Our time is up, but I can give the final word to Amitabh from India's perspective. What do you hope to achieve by 2030?
should always be optimistic. This is a huge opportunity for Global South. And to my mind, by 2030, India would be doing 500 gigawatt of renewable energy. We would be a champion of green hydrogen. We would have brought down the cost of green hydrogen to $1 per kilogram. By 2030, we would be exporting hydrogen, and we would have converted all our two-wheelers, three-wheelers into electric, and almost 55,000 buses would be running in electric mode in India, and we would have provided our citizens a better quality of life. But we would be partnering the Global South in many of these technological disruptions.
Amitabh, thank you very much indeed for that. That wraps up our panel. And I'm sure you'll agree it's been a stimulating discussion and conversation. And I'm sure our ministers and our advisors will be available to talk to you afterwards if you have any burning questions. Thank you very much indeed.